Yes, people, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. First things first, guys, make sure you smash up the like, subscribe if you're new around here, all of that good stuff. And as always, leave your thoughts in the comments. The international break's almost done. Chelsea back in action at Nottingham Forest on Saturday lunchtime. But in today's video, we're going to be discussing that man, Moises Caicedo, and whether there is an over-reliance on him from Chelsea. To discuss this in more depth, I'd like to be joined by friend of mine and Chelsea correspondent for the Standard, Dom Smith. Mate, good to catch up as always. How's things? You good?
All good, mate. All good. Looking forward to this.
Nah, good stuff. So yeah, let's still talk about it. Obviously, international break, all sorts of debates come up, and the one that's been raging is kind of the Caicedo, Declan Rice situation. We're not going to bore people to death with that again, but it does raise sort of a bit of an interesting point where in the past there's been the Cole Palmer FC tag chucked at Chelsea, and rightfully so to some degree. But this season, Chelsea actually haven't won a game in which Palmer's played, which I know he's not played many, but we haven't won any of the games in which he's featured in. But is there now potentially an over-reliance on Caicedo? He started all 38 Premier League games last season. He started every game this season, bar the Carabao Cup tie against Lincoln. He is absolutely vital. And I think most Chelsea fans would admit that he probably is the most important player in the squad right now, and the one that we could probably least afford to be without. Where do you stand with the Caicedo thing? Do you think Chelsea are sort of walking a rope where there is a danger of there being an over-reliance on Caicedo, or do you think we're already at that point?
Well, I would certainly agree that he's the most important player Chelsea have got, and I think that's possibly true even if Cole Palmer is playing. Cole Palmer's maybe the better player. He's certainly the more flashy player because he's an attacking player. But I do think that it's Caicedo who's the player who gives Chelsea the biggest chance of winning a match. I mean, he is just comfortably world class. He could well be the best midfielder in the Premier League at the moment. I think he probably is. But in terms of over-reliance, we don't know necessarily because I don't think has he missed a game this season? I don't think he has.
No, just Lincoln. It was just Lincoln in the Cup. Yeah.
That's it. So by my mind, I don't think he's missed a match that mattered with respect to Lincoln, who we only beat 2-1, rather, who Chelsea only beat 2-1. But I will say that I think Caicedo is, at the moment, playing what I would say is probably the best football of his career in the Premier League to date. I mean, he obviously stood out when he was at Brighton. That's the reason why Chelsea spent so much money on him. But the football he's producing this season has been really impressive. And I'm not just saying that because he's added goals to his game. I think he scored 3 league goals already, and that's the same as anything he'd done prior to Chelsea. It might even be more, actually. And of course, the quality of the goals has been really high as well. The goals against Brentford and obviously Liverpool were amazing goals that gave Chelsea fans, a lot to celebrate in times which have been quite tough. I think it's fair to say between September and October international breaks, it was quite poor from Chelsea, most of those performances, until it came to the last 2 games against Benfica. Even that wasn't a great performance, but it was at least a good result. Liverpool was a great performance and a great result. Caicedo, is there an over-reliance? We don't know until we watch Chelsea without him. We don't know until we watch a Lavia standing in or a Dario Asugo standing in a serious match where Caicedo is injured. We won't, or suspended. We won't know until that. But I do get the feeling that it would be that they would lose a hell of a lot. Enzo Maresca would lose a hell of a lot if he didn't have Caicedo available.
Yeah, I think in a one-off game, you'd probably be all right. I think Chelsea can get by without Caicedo in the odd game here or there. You've got players like Romeo Lavia, Andre Santos, good players who in a one-off game could fill in. But I think the real worry would come if there ever was a point where Caicedo was missing for a prolonged period of time. If he was sidelined for like 4, 5, 6 games, or he was out for sort of a month or two, then I think Chelsea would have a major problem because what he brings to the team, no other midfield player in the squad brings. Other midfield players have obviously got great qualities, great ability, and loads of talent, but they're not bringing to the team what he brings. And I think there's almost a sense from Chelsea fans to a certain extent that we can't just take it for granted when you watch Caicedo play, because he's he just drops 7, 8, 9s out of 10 every week. And you sort of come away from games and you're like, oh, Caicedo was decent again today. And it's almost just become the norm that he's performing to such a high level. Whereas I think only now, for some reason, is he finally getting recognition from the wider footballing world, the media in general, are suddenly waking up the fact that Caicedo is pretty good. Like, you hear Gary Neville after the Liverpool game, like talking about Caicedo as the best player in the Premier, like the best midfielder in the Premier League currently. But for the last year, he's been absolutely outstanding, and no one's really said anything about him. And why do you work within the media? I know it's written media rather than televised media, but why do you think with Caicedo it's taken so long, or longer than it should, for him to finally be getting recognised from the wider media, the bigger media companies and stuff?
I think people who cover Chelsea week in, week out will have given him his praise for the last year. I think the difference is, unfortunately, we still live in a world where if you score goals, then you make the headlines. And he's obviously been adding goals this season. So I wonder whether maybe he's getting it because they're coming off the back of an international break where the last game was a match in which he scored a phenomenal goal and he doesn't really score. And I think that's a bit depressing that it takes a player like that to score to be in the headlines. But I think that's probably a large part of it. What you said about the Rice versus Caicedo debate, I mean, that has been kind of, going on in the last few days. I think we at the Standard can take responsibility for a part of that, because we did we put it to our writers and we all had our say, including myself, on who we think is the better player. And if you go into Caicedo's stats, I mean, first of all, they're different players, aren't they? Declan Rice is being used more as a number 8 now by Mikel Arteta, and that's also true of Thomas Tuchel for England as well. They're both using him kind of further forward. Caicedo is a traditional number 6. I mean, he's definitely, for me, the best off-the-ball defensive midfielder in the world, and quite possibly the best defensive midfielder in the world either way. I mean, if you look at there's a metric of interceptions plus tackles, so both of them added together. And in the Premier League this season, only 4 players have got more than 30 of each combined, none of whom are Declan Rice. Then out on their own in the 40s, 46, is Moises Caicedo. So that says everything you need to know about how prolific he is at winning the ball back, at nibbling at the toes of the opponents in midfield. And he just covers so much ground as well. And I think one of the other parts of his game that's underrated, and I don't necessarily think that Moises Caicedo is the player you would look to unlock a kind of Trent Alexander-Arnold cross-field pass, completely accurate. I don't think that's necessarily, or yet at least, he's only 23. We've got to remember that. It's extraordinary what he's achieved at that age. But I don't think he's the player you'd be looking for, like, incredible line-breaking long passes. But he completed more passes by raw number than any other midfielder in the Premier League last season. It was something like 1,960 something, maybe 1,967, I think. And no one else came close to that. In fact, it was, of all players in the Premier League, apart from 6 players above him, which were centre-backs. And centre-backs always complete passes because they go left,
rocket,
right,
side to side, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that says a lot about how undervalued Moises Caicedo is on the ball, whereas I think he's respected off the ball because people people are getting used to seeing like pressing and tackling and acknowledging that. I think when Conor Gallagher was an England player and was a Chelsea player, people started to realise that, I know this is a weird comparison, but because they're very different players, but people started to realise how impressive Conor Gallagher was at just going and pressing the defence of any team. He's rapid at that. Jurgen Klopp said that Dominic Szoboszlai of Liverpool is the best Premier League, is the best presser in the world. People used to love Mason Mount for that reason. They don't stop running. And that's true of Caicedo in a different way. You know, he goes around and he nibbles at the feet of the other team when they've got the ball, and he invariably wins it. I mean, when he lunges in, he wins the ball. That is the only ever result. He wins the ball. So I think it's good that he's getting his flowers, as it were. Would Chelsea be over-reliant on him? We don't know. I mean, Lavia, when he's been fit, has really impressed.
Outstanding, yeah.
Hasn't he? He's really been good for Chelsea. But it's just been all too rare and infrequent that we've had those moments. I quite like the look of Dario Isugo, and I think it's a shame that he's injured because I think he has the makings of being a really capable sort of replacement, understudy for Caicedo, which would help to ease the burden. Certainly at the moment, Chelsea fans might be worrying a little bit about whether they're over-reliant on Caicedo. But what I would say is just enjoy him. Enjoy him. Most teams in the Premier League, any team in the Premier League would want to have that at the base of their midfield.
I mean, you talk about like attacking players and that, getting all the plaudits, and that's kind of the way the modern game is now. But when you look at Chelsea, right, you look at the type of midfielders they've had in that sort of Caicedo mould over the years. Makalele, Essien, Kante, Caicedo, Lavia now as well. Like, there's an unbelievable role of players there who are outstanding in that sort of number 6 sort of combative midfield position. And I think it's something that maybe goes a little bit under the radar as well, as how many, by the way, Chelsea haven't produced any of these players, but how many top draw holding midfield players or destroyer type midfield players that have been at the football club who are some of the best in the world and could go on to be some of the best. I mean, you talked about Caicedo on the ball, right? And look, he probably doesn't get the credit that he deserves on the ball, but some of the assists he gets, some of the passes that he plays as well, he has got quality on the ball. I think he is becoming a bit more of an all-round midfield player. I'm not saying that he's a complete midfield player right now, because he probably needs to improve on the ball. That's probably what I'd say when you look at him. His only weakness, he's not bad at it, by the way, but you look at maybe an area of improvement, he probably needs to get better on the ball, maybe in more advanced positions. But I look at his game in general, and there's no obvious weaknesses to his skill set at all. Like, he has got absolutely everything. And I think I do massively worry, because at some point there is going to be a period and there is going to be a time when Caicedo gets injured and he will miss a run of games. That's going to happen. When it's going to happen, we don't know. But that is going to happen at some point, whether it's this season, next season, or whenever it might be. And Chelsea have got to get used and got to find a way of playing without him. Now, you look at us playing without Cole Palmer. We have found ways to do that now. Enzo Fernandez has been pushed further up. You have Caicedo and Lavia in the pivot, Caicedo and Santos, and that's really solid. And that allows Enzo to focus more on getting into the box, crashing the box, scoring goals, and not having to worry as much about getting back. You've got other players. Esteban could play central. You could play Joao Pedro. Now you could use Buonanotte or whatever. But when you've got Caicedo out, you've got to rely on Lavia being fit. You've got to rely on Andre Santos upping his levels as well. Maybe you drop Enzo Fernandez and play him slightly deeper. But what you are losing massively is that ground coverage in midfield from Caicedo. But I think whilst Caicedo is probably Chelsea's most important player, I would almost argue that Romeo Lavia is right up there as well. Because if Caicedo is not going to play, Lavia suddenly takes on a significantly more important role in the squad. And I honestly think, he's so good, Lavia. Like when he come on against Liverpool, this is a guy that, it doesn't matter how long he's out of action for. As soon as he comes back, he's straight on the level required. I mean, in a Caicedo absence, he's surely the guy that you would look to step up and kind of fill that void. I know maybe he's not the same type of player as a Caicedo, but he's far more ready than an Asugu or an Andre Santos to step into that midfield and perform.
Well, we haven't seen Andre Santos is a different type of player. He's more of the Enzo Fernandez replacement anyway. He's a bit further forward, but we haven't really seen Dario Asugo and whether he's properly Premier League ready yet. You suspect he would be, but we've seen Romeo Lavia taking games to better teams when he was at Southampton. We haven't necessarily seen that from Dario Asugo because he's been signed from a different league and he's injured. So we don't know that necessarily, but I think all the signs that you've seen from Lavia, and who's a young player, are that he's got a very high ceiling and he can become a very, very good defensive midfielder, and one that, it's not inconceivable that he becomes so good that Chelsea have got a bit of a difficulty fitting them both into the team, because Caicedo and Lavia at the moment are sort of playing for the same position and would be for some time. But if let's say Caicedo got injured, and Chelsea fans will hope that doesn't happen, and Lavia really came in and took that mantle and was fantastic in that role, it'd be quite hard for him to then get dropped, wouldn't it? But I think he's a player that the team will be desperate to keep fit, and the medical staff will be keen to keep fit, because he's the only obvious replacement for Caicedo now that Asugo is injured.
I mean, it's a great problem to have. I mean, arguably, you want to play all three of them. You want to play Enzo, Caicedo, and Lavia if you can. We've seen it a couple of times last season. All three of them played, but you'd have Caicedo starting at right back and inverting into midfield, whilst Lavia and Enzo both started in the middle. With Reece James now back to his best and fit, and Gusto looking much better than he did last season, I don't really envisage a situation where, to get them all in, Caicedo gets shunted to invert from right back. I don't really see that happening. But it's all about just finding the right balance at the end of the day. But I do think like a Caicedo Lavia midfield probably offers better balance, certainly offers more from a defensive standpoint than Enzo Fernandez or Caicedo, for example. That's not saying that Enzo Fernandez is bad, but when you've got weak centre-backs, which Chelsea comparatively do compared to what they've had in the past and what the other top sides in the Premier League have got, that gets somewhat negated a little bit if you've got a Caicedo and a Lavia sort of midfield pivot in front of those centre-backs. That makes it, you feel a bit more confident in that situation. But it's a tricky one. But I do worry a little bit. I mean, sure. I mean, Maresca's obviously. I mean, do you think Chelsea must have planned for a situation at some point where they're going to be without Caicedo? I mean, you'd imagine that's part of the thinking.
I'm sure that's happened because players do get injured. Chelsea players seem to get injured a lot this season, don't they? We don't know whether it's got to have some impact from the Club World Cup. But yeah, I'm sure they've thought about it. Yeah,
you would expect so. I mean, but like you think it's pretty clear. Like the Caicedo importance on a team is more important than Cole Palmer.
I think so. I think Chelsea need a little bit of magic in the attacking areas, but they're starting to get that a bit from Esteban Willian, and also, João Pedro, when he gets space, which is not very often, he's a magical player as well. And I think, sometimes, he's been getting lost in games recently, Pedro. I think his only goals this season have been headers as well. He's not sort of actually hammered the ball into the net or curled it into the corner, which I think Chelsea fans are quite desperate to see something like that. But in tight spaces, he's fantastic, João Pedro. And Esteban can run through midfield, no problem. So they do have other players beyond Cole Palmer, who's clearly better than both of those players at doing that. But they don't really have that many players capable of doing what Caicedo is doing. That's why we've been talking about the importance of Lavia, because he's got the potential to be that. But I think Caicedo is so important to Chelsea and so integral that it would be a bigger, noticeable drop-off in what they could do if they lost him, I think.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think Chelsea have already shown this season we can win games without Palmer. I think Palmer's going to be out for the next 3 or 4 games anyway. So we're going to have to crack on and find alternative ways to win, which Chelsea have shown they can do. But yeah, look, you would feel like going to big away games, for example. I think this probably gives you the answer that fans, if they're unsure who's more important, going to a big away game, you'd much rather have Caicedo in your team than Palmer if you had a choice, because you need that stability and you need that ground coverage and that breaking up of play in midfield in those big games. Chelsea have got other players, as we touched on, that, all right, not on Cole Palmer's level, or maybe not going to produce the magic that he does, but can produce something in the final third which will lead to goals. There's no one really doing what Caicedo does in this situation on the ball in the midfield. Mate, last thing, how important do you think? Because he doesn't get rest, as we touched on, he's played every game this season bar one, and he started every Premier League game last season. How beneficial do you think it was for Chelsea that he didn't go to international duty in this break?
Very beneficial for Chelsea. Obviously, Ecuador, people might not know this, but Ecuador safely qualified for the World Cup already, and they had friendlies this month, so they didn't have any competitive games. And so I think it made sense. I believe Enzo Maresca, from what I understand, Enzo Maresca did actually speak to the coach of Ecuador and said, he's a bit injured at the moment, and it'd be best if you don't take him. I think there is an injury that he's carrying. I think there's a knot that he's carrying. of some sort, but I think it's just to protect him. They've done the same with a few players this month, and I understand that. I mean, international football is very important, but in the context of Ecuador, who've already qualified for the World Cup and they've only got 2 friendlies, Caicedo is more important, really, that he's fit and firing for Chelsea, because he's going to be in Ecuador's starting lineup at the World Cup anyway. That's completely obvious. So, yes, I think it's good news for Chelsea.
No, yeah, 100%. This guy barely gets any rest anyway, so yeah, that for sure is going to be beneficial. But I think we'll round out there, guys. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think there is an over-reliance on Caicedo for Chelsea, mate? Thanks for joining. As always, pleasure to chat football. If people want to check out your work and stuff, where should they go?
They can go to standard.co.uk, which is the Standard's website, or I'm on Twitter at Mr. Don Smith.
Yeah, guys, make sure you check out that. I'll link it in the description, so go and check it out. Go and have a look at some great stuff over there. And yeah, guys, smash the like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And I'll catch you again in another one soon.